several people have asked me, how do you manage to work at home? Because it's not easy for a child to know that their mother is inside and not accessible. But as I said, there are lot of pros of being an entrepreneur, of working on your own terms, but there are also some cons. And from what I hear, when I'm out, like, there's maybe like 5 minutes of some disturbance, some crying maybe. But after that, he's just like busy and occupied with his own thing. So I've realized that sometimes it's more about, as a mother, you feel really bad to leave your child and go out of home. So we've had like these small little cardboard books with, those monochrome colors and a lot of music. And those are things that he loves. Also do household activities at home with us.
Today, I have the pleasure of introducing my first guest, Sneha Kapoor. She is a dynamic entrepreneur and the founder and director of Plum Insights, which is a thriving market research company in Mumbai. Sneha holds a master's in media and cultural studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She is a dedicated mother to 2.5-year-old Samir, and she has successfully balanced motherhood and career, growing her company by more than 100% since the birth of her son. Today, we'll dive into her inspiring journey and insights on managing business and motherhood. Stay tuned. What does a typical day look like for you?
A typical day. Well, I think a typical day is sort of, very well planned at this point to make sure that everything gets fit in, and we have a schedule that we try to follow as much as possible. So yes, I think mornings are busy. We have my son wakes up at 7:30 in the morning, and we have to now leave at 8:30 for his play school.
Okay.
So that 7:30 to 8:30 time slot is super hectic with the breakfast and dressing up and all of that going on. And then we leave to school. We reach by around 9 a.m. And it's a new school, and he's sort of settling in right now. So there is, he's sort of doing 2 hours in this Montessori type preschool. And yes, I'm around in the background just in case there are any emergencies while he settles in.
Okay.
And I open up my laptop at Starbucks, which is just opposite the road, and I sit there for 2.5 hours, pick him up, and come back home.
Oh, okay.
And yes, and then I continue. I work at home. Have my own home office where I'm in right now.
All right.
And so I continue my day in my home office till later in the evening, and I'm very grateful to have household help. A fantastic nanny who spends time with Samir through the day while I'm at work. And of course, my husband's also around. He has a flexible kind of a job, which allows him the ability to pop in and out and spend time with Samir through the day as his schedule allows. And post work, I tend to head straight to the park with Samir.
What time is
It's
that?
around I think around 5:30.
Okay.
5:30 in the evening, and we are very fortunate to have a park just on the other side of the wall of the society in which we live in Mumbai. So we spent about an hour and a half in the park, really expending some energy, running around with some other toddlers.
Okay.
And then come back home by 7. Dinner, bath time, all of that happens, and we are in bed by 8:15. A different question. There's a different question. I mean, I think when Samir goes to sleep is another question.
Oh, okay.
But we are in bed by 8:15.
All right, all right. Does it ever happen that you have to go to your office also, or you're always working from home?
Yes. I think that's one of the plus points of running your own business, that you can allow yourself the flexibility and plan things in a way that best suits you. So I work in a hybrid setup. So I spend 3 days in the week working at home in my home office, and 2 days I go into a co-working space, and I join my team there.
Alright.
So that's the balance that we have right now.
So, like during the time when you're working, does it happen that Samir asks for you or something, or have you come to that settlement with him that now mommy's at work, we are playing work or something?
Yeah. That's an interesting question, and several people have asked me, how do you manage to work at home, with him outside, because it's not easy for a child to know that their mother is inside and not accessible. But as I said, there are some lot of pros of being an entrepreneur, being a of working on your own terms. But there are also some cons. One of the cons was that I was not able to take a very long maternity break. I got back to work, I think, within about 30 to 40 days after I delivered Sameer.
Oh, okay.
And my business was not in a place at that point where I could fully take a step back. I still had to be involved in different ways. So from the time that Sameer was really like a newborn, I had several hours where I would go into my home office and open up my laptop. In the early days, I was not able to work for maybe sometimes even more than 45 minutes at a stretch.
Yeah.
But now he's gotten quite used to it, and he knows that today is Mama's home office day. So she's there, she's inside, and I think the fact that I'm around gives him some comfort. So yes, I'm able to work at home. Almost the whole day uninterrupted. But that also means I have to work with my door locked because, and then stay inside the room because, I try not to go out and disturb his routine because, I think he also then kind of, wants me around and I'm not able to pull away easily. So
Yeah.
that's the routine that we've been able to form after, through the way that I think through his early years as well. He's gotten used to it.
And on the days when you're going to the office, does he often call you or how does it go?
Yeah, so on the days that I do go to office, we have a drop pickup routine that's planned between my husband and I. So I drop him to school and head off to work, and he knows that today's Mama's out office day. Then my husband picks him up and then brings him home, and he has his normal routine. And I come back in the evening by around 6:37, and the first thing that he exclaims to the nanny is that Mama finally came home. Like he was waiting, even though he was completely busy playing with his cars and trucks or whatever it was. Like he always exclaims as if he's been waiting, waiting so desperately for me to come home.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's our routine and how it works.
Beautiful.
It works fairly well for us
Okay.
on most days.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the conversation you have had with Sameer in like when explain it to him that okay, today is my office or tomorrow mom will be out of house for these many hours. How did that go? How was that conversation with him? What did you say exactly and how did he take it?
I mean, he doesn't particularly enjoy. I mean, like the fact that I have to leave, go out of home, but he kind of gets used to it, and I don't really have a choice. And I think given all the flexibility that my work offers me, 3 days at home, 2 days in the office, I don't have any guilt of going out of home for those 2 days. So I think that really means that I'm able to kind of also step away, even if he's not happy about it. So I think I mean, in the earlier times, like I think ever since he was about a year old or so, I have had this routine. So he knows that there are some days when Mama needs to go out, but Mama always comes back in the evening. So that's always something I tell him that, wherever Mama goes, Mama's going to come back. And here's what you're going to go through the day. So he always is looking, make sure that he has enough to do, and he knows and he's excited about what he's going to be doing through the day.
Absolutely.
And from what I hear, when I'm out, like there's maybe like 5 minutes of some disturbance, some crying maybe, but after that he's just like busy and occupied with his own thing. So I've realized that sometimes it's more about my or as a mother, you feel really bad to leave your child and go out of home, but for the child it's maybe like 5 minutes, and as long as it's 5 minutes of distress, but later on, as long as they have a loving, warm environment and able to take care of them, something fun to do, they are absolutely fine.
All right. I like the fact that how you mentioned that mama's gonna go and mama's gonna come back.
Yeah.
Because that gives him the emotional security that okay, he's not being left alone. She will be back.
Exactly.
Kind of.
Yep.
So you mentioned about some activities that you plan for him to look forward to in the day. Would you like to tell something more about it? Like how have you been
Sure.
doing that since last 2.5 years? What activities have you been planning?
Sure. I think, I mean, thing is that a child from, birth to 2.5 years goes through so many different stages. So I think the activities also that I've planned and the ways our routine has evolved has changed over this time. So in the beginning, I think, in the early days, children sleep, I think, every 2 hours, and then it kind of, the wake windows increase and increase. They are also, their awareness of the world around them, their abilities, motor skills, cognitive skills, sensory skills are all expanding. So based on the age, there have been different activities we've done. But I think one thing that has been consistent ever since he was perhaps, like, I think maybe 2 months old, is we've kind of played a lot of music for him, and also read to him a lot. So yeah, so we've had like these small little, cardboard books with, those monochrome colors,
Yeah.
and a lot of music, and those are things that he loves. And I really like encourage people to to get their kids to read or to interact with books from a very early age. And this is something I think, as growing up in Indian families, we don't, I feel, appreciate enough, because somehow there is this association of kids and books with padai, with studying. So I even used to hear from my extended family that, why are you making him study when he's just a 3 month old? Isn't it too early? But I think, like, there's a lot that kids pick up, not just in terms of, like, they begin to associate words with colors and images. Their vocabulary grows, as they also, grow, they begin to understand certain concepts, ask questions, and I really do feel speak a lot more quickly. So that's one activity. Like, having books around is one thing that I've always done. And apart from that, like, age appropriate toys and some amount of motor activity. So whether it's like playing a ball or playing some music and jumping around, like, these are some things that we just do. So I think we have had a range of, like, so what I used to do in the early days, and I wouldn't say like this was before 6 months, maybe like 11 months onwards, we used to keep like a few toys out every day, and those would be the toys that he would play with.
Nice.
So rather than having all the toys out at all the time, which is kind of overwhelming, by encouraging him to just play with a few, he was able to really engage and focus and concentrate. And then when he got bored of that, we would kind of put those away and bring on a new set. I think in the early days also we were trying to, or maybe 11 months, or maybe 1.5 years or so, when he was around 1.5 years, we tried to introduce the concept of colors to him. So we would have at home yellow day, green day, where all the green toys would come out, and we would come green and then yellow. So I don't think we were consistent enough in making it, in following through. But I did think that it created a lot of excitement with him,
Nice.
in him. And it was exciting for us at home. So I think these are small things. Now we have, now at 2.5, I mean, I think maybe since 2 years, we have painting and coloring and drawing time. And, I really encourage him to sort of also do household activities at home with us. So, and in his Montessori play group, they really encourage cleaning, dusting, using a wiper on a window. So we have this activity where we paint the window, a full glass window, with different color paints, and then clean it. And that takes 3 hours. And it's very fun because it's colors and water and then, all of these different things. So,
and you're like, okay,
yeah,
now 3 hours, you can focus on work. He is busy painting and removing.
yeah, because he knows how to dust and also clean some windows and clean his own shoes. So yeah, important to teach these life skills young.
Lovely. That's beautiful how creatively you have been engaging him and helping him look forward to the day. It's interesting how kids bring out the kid in us, and it's so much fun. The journey is so much fun.
Absolutely. It's so much fun. I think you don't need to be too, like, I really don't believe in like buying expensive toys or, having too many toys, because I think if you use a bit of creativity, you can find the use for anything. You can find a way to reuse things that you have at home itself to have a lot of fun. So just like, I mean, we make activities out of things that are in the kitchen, like, for example, one great activity for even for children as I think early as 11 months old is to just get them, attuned to different kinds of textures and scents. So, just taking some spices from the kitchen, not the spicy, like the high potent ones, but things like cinnamon or cloves.
clothes.
Yeah, all these kind of things, and putting it in little dabbas and getting them to smell it. That can be very stimulating for them. Or even just giving them like different, vegetables and making them play with it, and saying the name repeatedly of what it is. It encourages them to also, pick those up.
Nice. So did you do these activities by yourself for Samir?
Myself, plus also I have my nanny, who I'm very blessed to have, have her support. And so I think these days, if you go on Instagram or YouTube, you can be exposed to hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of creative activities. So I think in my downtime while working, I do a lot of research on those. Try to, and I share a lot of videos with my nanny, and we kind of plan out these sort of things. So,
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice. The nanny seems to be very engaged. And okay, today we'll do vegetables with Samir. Today we'll do spices.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So around, like, I think 1.5 years as well, it's a great time to also get them to have sensory. I mean, get used to the tactile senses of, like, more subtle tactile senses. So
Okay.
things like we have in our Indian kitchen, such as dals and rice, and all of those. Those are great, would you say, objects to stimulate this tactile sensation. So hiding stuff in like a bowl of rice and getting them to use their hands to find that. All of those things are, really simple things that you don't need too much time or money to set up.
Absolutely.
But it's very easy to do.
And it's also helping them learn to interact with their environment, to get more comfortable with it.
Absolutely. To rely on expensive toys, or
Yeah.
which are, I feel, I feel, not always required. There's so much to stimulate a child with at home itself.
No, absolutely. And so it sounds like you haven't introduced much of screen to Samir. Is that so?
We've tried our best to, keep him as far away as screens, or limit screen time as much as possible. So I think I think till he was about like a year and a half or so, we had like absolutely no screen time at all. But then as he kind of grew a little older, like he, I think we are so, as parents as well now, we are so hooked on to our phones. We always have them.
Yeah.
So there's a, and it's hard, I think, as a parent, to just put my phone completely away while I'm with him. It's not something I'm super proud of. But he has also understood that a phone is, there is a lot of things that you can do on a phone. So initially I would limit it to just like showing him photos, or but not like long YouTube videos. But now he's reached the point of time where he kind of has like 15 minutes or 20 minutes of screen time in a day. So I think as long as it's that much and not over that, I'm okay. And there's a lot of research around like the effect of screen time on kids that little. Of course, like, it's not just, it creates like a dopamine rush in them, and their brains and their bodies are not able to process that so much. So it kind of changes them, changes their body. Yeah, but there are some shows that are less stimulating. So shows that don't have like too much color in them, or are slower in pace, I think are shows that I tend to show, and I play them very slowly. So not at one, even like, the normal speed, but I choose to play them at 0.75 or zero point 0.5, so that it's really slow. Because like, fast moving things with, lots of colors and all of that can be overstimulating for a young child.
Okay, that's interesting. So reducing the speed of the video what
Yes.
they are watching.
Yeah.
Helps.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, I would like to know more about your postpartum phase, Sneha. Like you said that you started working like just 30 days after your delivery. How was that like? Because many career-oriented women, they tend to feel very restricted after having a baby. And you have a company which you have invested since last 7 years, and you have such big dreams for it. So when you had a baby, did you ever feel restricted? I mean, I'm sure you did feel, but how did you deal with it? And did it ever lead to feelings of inadequacy, or sometimes feelings of guilt, like not being there for the baby, having doubts around that, because you are trying to balance? And because what happens, like, when a baby is born, a mother is born. So you were born as a mother. So how was that postpartum phase like?
I think for any mother, despite your circumstances and the amount of support, however much support or however little support you have, it is difficult, with the hormonal changes, your social role changing, your identity changing, just like such little sleep, your body healing. It's not easy at all. For me, some things that worked to my advantage was being able to have full-time help, have family support, extended family support, and a husband who has a flexible schedule. So I did have like a lot of people around me, who I could rely on to, sort of manage the household. The thing is that motherhood is also all consuming, as you have probably experienced yourself, and it's very difficult to split your mind in different directions, at that stage. And I guess that's why, taking a proper maternity break is so important, because I guess your mind and your body need to kind of reconfigure in different ways to make, to kind of fully accept or understand what your new role post a baby being born is actually all about, right? So I feel like for me, I was kind of getting used to that idea of splitting my mind, splitting my attention, while also kind of doing it at the same time. I did have like work, decisions I need to take at work, people to manage, revenue targets to meet, all of that. But also, of course, managing a newborn at the same time. So the good thing I think was I was super prepared for this, and I had like several people on my team who I could rely on. I also did hire somebody on my team to take on, some of the load that I was carrying, and that helped to a great degree. Apart from that, I think like there were several times where I was just unable to work. You're not able to kind of, work for extended hours. And even if you do push yourself to, if somehow you're able to find that support for the child to be with someone else while you're working, your mind is not to support, right? Of course, your mind's always pulled in the direction of your child, like how is my child doing? But apart from that, like with such little sleep, it's very difficult to focus, to balance different things. And so I found in that first year after Samir was born, I think I was able to do only mostly administrative things, and my work requires a lot of deep thinking, a lot of creativity, which I felt I wasn't very good at that first year after Samir was born. And it did lead to, a lot of feelings of guilt, of inadequacy for sure. And I think the nature of my work also, the nature of my business also changed as a function of me going through the stage of having a child. Because as I said, like when Samir was born, a lot of the business decisions, a lot of the creative output of my agency was dependent on me. And I was not able to perform or do the same things at that level after Samir was born, or maybe even like a year after he was, still about a year after. So it just naturally meant that there were other people on the team that needed to step up to take responsibility, or solutions needed to be found. And I think now I can say 2.5 years, after that period, after Samir came, that it all worked out in a positive way. Because I mean, if I hadn't had Samir, I might have been still at the center of my company and not allowed people around me to grow. So the business still would have been extremely founder-led, very centralized decision making, as compared to right now, where there are middle managers and a lot of consultants and all of that. So I do feel like it was a very difficult period personally, tiring, emotionally exhausting, feelings of inadequacy, all of those things. But it was very crucial for my business that I stepped back, and, being a mother or having a child forced me to step back, and that allowed other people to step up. So yeah, growth is never easy, but I think it was a stage of immense growth. And I didn't see it in a positive light then, for sure, but I do definitely see the story. I think there's a phrase, right? Hindsight brings great wisdom.
Yeah.
So I really think that's true.
So when you were in the phase of stepping back from business, did you ever feel that what if I am never able to get back, or what if I, were there doubts around that what if I just get stuck here?
Yeah. There were times where I think I had several meltdowns, several feelings of, whether I was even able to do it. Several feelings where I questioned what's fair versus not, why am I not? If I'm contributing so much to my business, why is it that I'm not able to create that space for myself at a time when my child needs it the most, right? Because, being an entrepreneur should allow you to have flexibility, and I didn't. So there were a lot of feelings of unfairness that I felt at that time.
So I mean, like this happens. This is like my daughter right now is she'll be turning
Mm.
5 months old next week.
Yeah.
So I sometimes get in that zone that sometimes I'm very motivated. Okay, no, I'll get back to my career.
Mm.
I'll be able to look after my career again. But there are days when I just feel that what if I
Yeah.
just end up being just a mother, or what if I end up being a
Yeah.
homemaker or something? Because right now I'm in the maternity phase. I mean, I have decided to give myself a break for the first 6 months
Yeah.
and then get back to work. I had those fears, and I still do
Yeah.
sometimes. So
Yeah.
that's my question.
Yeah.
That did you have those fears and that you will
Yeah.
lose something that you really built, you really worked so hard to build since that time, 5 years?
Yeah, I think absolutely, Muskan, and I think that's I think now the way that our generation has been raised by our own mothers. I mean, we have always been encouraged to have full lives where of which motherhood is just one part and it's not the whole, right? And our lives before motherhood perhaps were a very full career life, full social life, all of that. And I think that early motherhood stage does leave you feeling extremely confined, constricted, I think emotionally very raw. And because you are kind of reconsidering, I mean, you're kind of like reconfiguring your life, what your life will be after this phase.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's a time of, how do I put it into words? Like it's really a stage where you can be anything at the end of it. You are not that person that you were before you had a baby, and your life will never be the way that it was. But what it can be is really about, like, I think what you make it, or how you choose to live your life, how you choose to plan your life, right? And that's where I think it's really important to find very creative solutions in order to a full attentive mother, as well as have the kind of career or work life that you desire. But at this time, it's a phase, and many people told me this as well. It's a phase. It's just a phase that you have to go through. That, I mean, they say that the 3 months postpartum are actually like the fourth trimester.
Yeah.
Because your body is still readjusting to the world, and your child is so physically dependent on you that it's not possible to think about anything else at all. But it is possible to begin to find the space slowly, like, more time opens up, and with that you will realize that you are able to manage your schedule in a different way, where you can make room for the things that you love, and like the new you that emerges as you that slowly emerges as you begin to find more and more space for yourself as your child grows, is really, like, as I said, like, very different from what you were. So you might find, I mean, I have so many friends, and I've heard stories of women postpartum, post having a child, doing very different things, or managing their lives in a very different way,
Okay.
managing their careers or approaching their careers in a very different.
Like
And I think that that's only
approaching in a
natural.
different way, as in?
Like, for example, people who have changed their career tracks, for example, like, people who have had, who have been consultants, maybe, that have opened a small business related to making things, I mean, creating some kind of a service or a product for children.
Yeah.
Or, for example, people who have chosen to organize their lives and their time in a different. So rather than going into work to an office building like 5 or 6 days a week, working flexi time, or working in a remote role, which still allows them to contribute and fully when they have that time, but also make room in their life for being a mother, for being a complete mother. So yeah, it's never going to be the way that it was before you had a child, but it can be very full and value creating, I think, as well. So yeah, it's hard to maybe fully understand, and it's nerve wracking, I think, when you're going through that, like, what's going to happen after this? Am I going to lose myself in this stage
Yeah.
where I'm just, like, been peed on and vomited on, and like, I have no sleep and I can't think. But it is a stage. It is genuinely a stage,
All
and
right.
it will pass. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Amazing. Could you breastfeed, Samir?
Yes. I
Yeah.
could breastfeed him.
I mean,
We had a
because
long
of
saga
schedule
for
that you had and you had to
breastfeeding.
resume work. So like until how long
Yeah.
could you manage breastfeeding?
Yes, I breastfed Samir for 2.5 years. He just stopped breastfeeding like I think 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's that's beautiful.
Long journey. So I would have liked to stop much earlier. However, I think it was difficult for me to wean him off fully. I think in the early days, I was quite like clear and certain that I wanted to exclusively breastfeed him for the first 6 months, and I was fortunate to be that my body was able to do that for him. And in this first 6 months, as I said, I started working again, and I was not able to kind of be there for him physically when he needed to be fed. So I did establish like an expressing routine, and slowly was able to kind of build enough of a stash of a supply for him to be fed whenever he needed to by somebody else in the family or our nanny. And I think post that, like, while I think post 6 to 8 months, we started also having him on solids. For 6 months we started solids as well, so the amount of milk that he needed was less. So we began, and he has a good appetite still. He does have a good appetite, so he took to solids fast. And I think there we did try powdered milk for him, but and I know that many children, many little babies, like, have that, just adapt to it immediately, but he didn't.
Okay.
And he didn't like it, so it was difficult for him to fully like accept that. So I think the powdered milk phase just lasted for a few months.
Okay.
And then as solids became his main meal, like
Yeah.
he was having like 3 meals, 3 solid meals. Like, I stopped breastfeeding him through the day. I think maybe at around like maybe about like 8 to 10 months. When he was 8 to 10 months, I stopped that routine. But it was only in the nights, and I think in the night it was, we had a kind of a routine where he would sleep next to me. I was feeding him to sleep, and I think I wasn't able to kind of get him to wean off that ritual, and it took a long time for that to stop. 2.5 years. So at around 2 years, the only kind of feeding that I was doing was in the night. So which meant that he was quite, I think, attached to having me next to him. And I if and to be honest, like, I could not, like, because I think my work was such that, like, I needed to be fresh. I mean, I wasn't able to fully take off on days just unpredictably when I hadn't had enough sleep or anything. I found it difficult to sort of to wean him off, or fully, in the sense that get him to sleep train him, for example, because that involved, like, not pick him up when he cries. So I found it very easy to do the sideline and feeding him like that. So he got used to me being next to him. So finally, the way that he weaned was when I left home for 5 or 6 days. My husband and my nanny managed to take care of him, and when I came back, he was okay. He didn't want mama's milk anymore.
Okay.
That's our story.
Okay. Okay. Lovely. I've heard from my grandmothers and all that you have to apply red mirchi powder and something to help the
Yeah,
baby stop breastfeeding. Did you ever try
yeah.
something like that as well?
I tried that. I tried that. It didn't
Okay.
work. I tried, like, even putting like a band-aid around myself. Didn't work.
What was the
I tried
band-aid
many
thing?
things.
Where did you apply this
No, you
band-aid?
just wrap yourself up and say that, mama got hurt. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
but he ended up feeling so upset about it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I couldn't go through. He was so upset, and he was like crying about it. That mama got hurt. So
Oh God.
I couldn't,
Oh, he got
couldn't go
emotional
through.
about mom getting hurt. He
Yeah,
was like, oh God, no.
exactly. Yeah, what happened to mama? What happened?
So you mentioned about expressing milk since the beginning. Would
Mm.
you like
Mm.
to tell something more about that? How do you maintain that routine, and like what were you using to express, and were you using those feeding
Mm-hmm.
bags? About
Yes.
storage, how do you manage
Yes.
that batch?
Yes,
of milk.
yes. I need to think back right now. So I think like when he was about 4 or 5 months old, I need to leave him for a few days. And this was pre-planned. It was something work related, and I started. I think so. I'd started expressing. I think when he was about 6 or 8 weeks old or something, and I would express in the morning and have maybe 3 bottles of 60 ml or 80 ml in the fridge. I mean, I wouldn't express at one go 80. I mean, all those 3 bottles, but like in the morning, maybe in the afternoon, and I mean in the late morning, and then in the afternoon, I would express like that. So there would be 3 bottles that were in the fridge for Samir when he would need it, and that was okay for him. I think more or less, as per my memory. But then, since I was leaving, I think about when he was about 5 months or so, I tried to start expressing a little bit more in between these periods where I would normally express to build up more of a stash that I could freeze, put in the refrigerator for the time that I was away. So I did that, and I was able to have a, what do you say, like these feeding bottles, sorry, feeding bags for the enough for to feed him for 3 days, 4 days, I think. So yeah, it involved like putting date down and putting it in the freezer. And yeah, just making sure that there was a section in the freezer for just that. There was a section in the fridge as well for like milk bottles, and nothing else would be kept in that space. I remember carrying my machine and going into, there was a room. I worked at WeWork with a new mother's room. There is a new mother's room that they have, which is very nicely furnished. So I would express there, and I would have, a Swiggy genie pick up and get it home. So there were some days that I did that as well, and it worked out for me. And I think you need to do whatever whatever works, because if you are feeding, then your breasts do feel full, and you need to express that out,
Yeah.
whether or not your child needs it at the time. So I had the facility where I had the space, and I had my machine. So it was just a matter of like taking 20 minutes or half an hour out and doing this. When I worked in Singapore, I had like several colleagues who used to do this, and they had actually changed one meeting room into a room just for new mothers for exactly this purpose. You have to head out of home. It's important to articulate what your needs are as a new mother,
Yeah.
because motherhood is such an experience that unless you have been in that position, you will never fully understand the needs of a new mother. So it's important to articulate that, and I feel like not be embarrassed or feel like you're asking for too much. I mean, like, we are literally raising the next generation of humankind, right? So we need to be able to ask for what we need in order to make that happen in the best possible and enable us.
And it's so inspiring that you and the women who you have seen who have been expressing milk and managing this way is it shows that you're not seeing a baby, a child as a restriction to your
Yeah.
career, which most of the women refrain from family, from marrying, from having kids, thinking that, oh, I'll be restricted or I won't get space to have a career. But that's not the case anymore. Employers are also more open minded.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, I feel like we don't live in a world anymore where we, where, things are so linear, or the need to stick to predefined roles is important. The world has changed so much from when our parents were mothers, when our mothers were mothers. Our lives, our expectations of ourselves, our expectations from our partners, what society expects from us is different. So, and I think, like, in many ways, we are perhaps the first generation to really have so much freedom as Indian women to have flourishing careers where we are fully accepted in our workplaces, or our contributions are fully accepted. But maybe we don't necessarily. I mean, the space to be a full mother, keeping in mind your professional role, that is not fully carved out. And I say this after speaking to a lot of mothers, a lot of women who are in the same position. I've spoken to so many women as a part of my research as well. I am a market researcher. Women who are mothers, who have full careers, but perhaps don't have necessarily, I wouldn't say social support or family support, because that does exist, but maybe the permission to to exercise and to voice what they need. And somehow I feel there is a need to accept the perspectives of many others and feel bad about not being able to perform to so many expectations. Very often, I mean, those expectations are of others. It's not maybe what you relate to.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to really be courageous to face what it is that you genuinely need and articulate that to people around you. And once you fully explain that, I feel, and sometimes it needs more fighting. It's for sometimes it maybe just needs to be stated, and the people around you will be sensitive enough to understand. In many cases, for maybe Indian women who don't live in such permissive environments, maybe some battle is required. And I think the function of how gender has evolved in this last generation, where women have flourished outside the home, but within the home, expectations of the mother are still very static. I hope you are able to understand what I
Absolutely.
mean. I'm being a bit abstract, but
No,
yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah. All right. Also, you mentioned that Samir has joined Montessori.
Yes, yes, yes,
Would you like to
yes.
tell something more about it? So, in India, like I have studied from India, my partner has, and Montessori wasn't there at our time, at least not that we
Yeah.
heard of. What is
Yeah.
this new concept of schooling? And I have heard people in my distant family as well who are sending
Mhm.
their kids to Montessori.
Yeah, I think while the technique, the Montessori form of education has been around for a long time, I think it's only become really popular in maybe the last, maybe 10 odd years or so. Montessori education comes from, was I think, the founder of Montessori education was a woman called Maria Montessori, who was actually, an Italian physicist and an educator, and she used to work with special children. The method that she developed was all based on observation of children actually who had disabilities, intellectual cognitive disabilities.
Okay.
So she built a process that offered structure, that offered the innate abilities within a child to flourish, while creating some kind of a structured environment within which those that creativity can flourish. So I think because her research was with children on a different end of the spectrum, she was able to develop very concrete ways of creating learning opportunities and methods for all. So by working with people who were, had those kind of deficiencies, she was able to create like a very foolproof method that could create learning among children who didn't have those disabilities. So, like, it's essentially a very, the method I think encourages a lot of individual instruction, exploration of through specially designed materials. It's largely based on, there are certain kind of, what do you say? I would say, toys and tools and activities that children are encouraged to kind of follow through. And what I love about like the school that Samir goes to is that it has children of a mixed age group. So unlike traditional preschool where you have kids of like a particular age, only maybe 1 year, who are born within the same year in a particular class. Samir's class has kids who he's 2.5, but he also has kids who are five and a half as well. So by having like this mixed age group, the children interact and they learn different things from each other. The older ones are mentors, the younger ones pick up, and that kind of builds a lot of social skills. So it's, I think, the kind of, what do you say, the materials that they use are supernatural. The teachers don't enforce or don't instruct in a very disciplinarian style. Everything, the child is left to explore the materials, the activities, as per their own pace, pick up what's interesting for them. The role of the teacher is only as a guide, rather than so the teachers are very kind of laid back in the class. The kid is expected to sort of take on what they're interested in. And it's interesting that, in such an environment, you think that like, okay, all these little children, are they going to, do anything? Will it be a lot of noise and chaos because the children, that they're not being disciplined? And, maybe that's a thought. But it's actually contrary, by encouraging a quiet environment where children are just encouraged to explore things and guided to what they're interested in, rather than told. It becomes very Montessori environments, Montessori classrooms, very industrious. So you find it usually quiet, kids working busily.
Okay.
It's actually called work. It's not called play or learn. This the word for these activities. The verb that's used is work.
Okay.
Kids are working on different things, and they're encouraged to inculcate basic life skills, such as like being able to dress themselves up well, as I said, like clean things, clean windows, dust things, wash plates, eat by themselves. So, a lot of independence is fostered as well.
All right. 3 tips you would like to give to the new parents for better toddler parenting.
I don't know if I'm qualified to do this.
Of
I
course
only
you
have my own
are.
experience.
Samir is almost done with the toddler phase. Yeah, now he'll be
Oh
a
my God.
preschooler very soon.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
so you have already mastered this phase.
I don't know if I'm a master, but all I would say is just to really kind of be easy on yourself. I think I was not easy on myself.
Okay.
I know, and many people told me this when I was going to be a mother, like be easy on yourself, don't take too much on.
I'm a mother, I'll be the best. I'm an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, I'll be the
exactly.
best.
I mean, be the best at what you choose, I feel.
Exactly.
But I think I would say, and I feel like I would also defend that position. It's important to, sort of bring your best to things, but also accept what your best is at that point. So don't compare yourself to what you were like before being a mother, or other people who are, your age, your peers, or other mothers as well, because your situation is just so unique to you. Basic thing that you are enough is that feeling that you are enough and you're doing your best is very important, and that also kind of prevents a lot of feelings of guilt and shame and inadequacy and all of that from sprouting. The second thing I would say is find your village, find your tribe, find your support system. It's not a while of course the mother's role in a toddler's life it's the primary role. You are the primary caregiver, but the primary caregiver needs support, and it's very important, I think, to find that support system in whatever form is available to you, whether it is as family, or friends, or hired help, or even daycare, whatever it is, to just accept the help. And I feel like as a new mother, you're just the recipient of so much love and care in general. So people around just want to help you. And I think like new motherhood is also an experience which is quite isolated, in the sense that nobody will get how you feel. Like you will truly get how you feel. Perhaps even your own mother, your own partner even, but they can support you even if they don't get you. So it's important to let people help you. So I think that's the other thing, like even while you may be feeling whatever it is that you are feeling, just to know that you're not alone. You may feel alone, but you are not alone. You can ask for help.
All right.
And I think the third thing is planning your time, the baby's time. Yes, planning things. I think kids thrive on routine, thrive on a schedule. Whatever you can do to lay that down, to make sure that your house functions on that schedule, will give you a lot of sanity, and will also open up time for yourself, to just take care of yourself when you need it first. And then slowly as your time increases, also do things outside of the home. Have your career, have, I don't know, meet a friend for coffee, whatever, get your hair done, whatever it is. So just plan your time well, and I think a lot
That's
is
very
what.
important to get a break, to
Yeah.
get the power to be patient again in bringing
Yeah.
up a
Yeah.
baby or toddler, whichever phase they are in. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sneha. It was
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure having you. And so thank you so much for sharing such insightful things about your journey so far.
Thank you for asking me. I think I haven't talked so much about this journey to anyone,
All
to
right.
anyone actually. So it's probably the first time that I'm articulating some of these thoughts. So
Beautiful. Thank you
thank
so
you,
much, Sneha.
Muskan, and
Lovely
all the
connecting
best
with
to
you.
you for
Thank
your
you.
for
Thank
your
you.
motherhood journey too.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.